Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual roundtable presented by Dr. Stephen Beeson. My name is Matt Hoffman with Practicing Excellence, and I am going to be your MC today. We have just a few housekeeping items before we jump in. We're going to have a large group, and everyone will be muted. We do still want to hear from you, so if you have a question or want to make a comment, please use the chat function within Zoom. We will also be taking questions at the end. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A function, which is different from the chat function on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Finally, you can find all the audio settings on the bottom left of your screen. If you're like most healthcare leaders right now, time is in really short supply, and we really appreciate you being here with us today. Our mission at Practicing Excellence is really simple. We focus on caring for the clinicians that care for our community. We do this by coaching and developing in areas where skills tend to be underdeveloped, such as patient connection, leadership effectiveness, and self-care, just to name a few examples. We're continually developing new coaching content together with our health system and medical group partners and with our faculty of subject matter experts. We work to distill their wisdom into 5-minute video-based coaching tips. Then we use our mobile app to deliver one coaching tip per week to all care team members. So everyone is learning and improving together at just 5 minutes a week. These coaching tips build on one another toward a specific outcome and ultimately culminate in certification, recognition, and team celebration. We're big on celebration. And we sustain progress through ongoing support, communication, and inspiration. We partner with over 40 health systems and medical groups of all shapes and sizes across the country, currently supporting tens of thousands of physicians, advanced practice providers, nurses, and staff. And we work with them to ensure that we are providing coaching tips on the topics that matter most. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephen Beeson. As many of you know, he is the founder of Practicing Excellence. I'm going to have him tell his story, but after dedicating 20 years to developing physicians, APPs, nurses, teams, and leaders through speaking and one-to-one coaching, scale became a prohibitive challenge. After writing 2 best-selling books on leader and clinician development and flying all over the country, speaking to organizations on these topics, he wanted to disrupt how we develop the skills of the people in healthcare. So in a Starbucks one day, the idea of app-based micro-learning to bring skill building to everyone was born. Now here we are, and I will pass to Steve to take us through coaching clinicians 4 steps to produce transformative results. Steve, please take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt, and certainly appreciate each of you being here. I know time is precious and we've got a lot on our plate now. And, you know, for me in my personal journey now expressed in the company that I started and working beside unbelievable people that make me better every single day, it is fundamentally 2 things. Number 1, helping people in healthcare become their very, very best, to become incredibly good at what they do with patients, with each other as leaders. And the second thing is to have care team members, teams, leaders love their clinical walk. So they look back over their shoulder at the end of a day, week, month, year, life and say, it's everything I hoped it to be. And the amazing news, and I think the essence of really what I've now dedicated my life to, is that one of those domains begets the other. When we become really, really good at our impact on patients, really, really good at team collaboration and building a sense of family, esprit de corps at the clinical microsystem level and across teams. And we become really, really good at leaders to actively engage our people to unleash their contributions to healthcare. When we do those things, the other thing takes care of it. And so, you know, people sometimes think, you know, you built this coaching thing to help people improve performance, which is not untrue, but it's really not why I've dedicated my life to coaching and developing people. It's because I want to help them love what they do And like many of you are seeing tangible evidence of the struggles that healthcare members feel right now. And so many nurses, physicians, APPs, leaders, managers have dedicated their lives to this work in healthcare. And this is the run that we have. We've now arrived in the place that we've worked so hard to get to. It's immensely important to do this well and to do it in a way that allows us to love our work. So again, that's why we're here. Our promises to you during the course of this session certainly outline the impact of coaching people to create fulfillment in their work, contribution, and meaningful, tangible outcomes. My personal belief and the worldview of practicing excellence is that developing people is the greatest untapped resource and change agent to create meaningful, transformative outcomes in healthcare. And we want to show you here today what we've harvested as the very best practice to build a coaching culture, where we take coaching from what it historically has been seen as, which is individual remediation, to organizational transformation. And what do we do to help evolve that transformation? And it's important to know that coaching individuals to become better at their work is immensely important, can be life-changing and even life-saving for people. And we advocate this method, this process. We even have built a coaching certification process to amplify that dial. Helping individuals become better at their work on a one-on-one basis is a powerful driver of change for that person. But when you have 1,000 clinicians, 700 clinicians spanned across multiple states, and you've got 2,000 nurses and 5,000 staff, it's very hard with that intervention to create the kind of results that we're accountable for, which is we're accountable for driving big organizational results. So we have to begin to widen the aperture of developing people to develop the skills to drive outcomes. And again, we're going to talk about some of the how-tos for coaching. What are the battle-tested approaches for how we best coach the individual, and what are the best practices for using coaching and development for an entire population of physicians, APPs, nurses, staff, nursing, and leaders to be able to move in a direction to execute a meaningful organizational purpose. And then we're going to provide you some resources. And so before we begin with the 4 steps, I want to set a little bit of context. This is the soil by which effective coaching culture arises from. And people say, well, how do we fix the burnout, exhaustion, despair challenge that is creating workforce instability among our teams? This is it. And this is the sentiment and the voice of care team members who are willing to access discretionary effort to help you achieve something. We are immensely reciprocal. So how the organization is led that creates the sentiment among clinicians where anybody I approach and pull them aside and say, what is it like here? They would say, I'm heard, I'm listened to, I know what it means to BS, I have a chance to contribute, I have a chance to grow, to be my best here. This is the sentiment of the clinicians that are actively engaged in your organizational journey. And in fact, a funny story, I have been a part of the Sharpey-Steele Medical Group until I founded Practicing Excellence, and my entire professional life has been with the Sharpey-Steele Medical Group as a part of Sharp Healthcare. And a number of years ago, we applied for the Baldrige Award and ended up winning the Baldrige Award. And what was fascinating about the process is that the Baldrige examiners didn't talk to leaders about how you're executing your outcomes here. They approached the individual care providers, the nurses, the clinicians, the team members, literally in the parking lot after clinical shifts, and asked them, tell me about the Sharp experience, our organizational change effort, and what it means to you. And it was their answers, the authenticity and consistency and loyalty and passion for who we were as an organization that won us the award. We were able to take our organizational mission and cascade that identity to the front line. And much of that ability to cascade and to create willingness to participate, willingness to engage, willingness to exert effort, willingness to use their influence to advance others, to use their voice and influence to engage teams is about clinicians feeling this way. And that is how the organization is being led. So as we look at how do we use coaching to execute organizational outcomes, a prong of that is how do we develop our leaders to engage our people? Because if we skip that step, our ability to engage clinicians to actively participate in the learning pathway is severely hampered. If clinicians say, I'm not valued here, I'm not cared about by leaders, my burden is not addressed, my ideas are never tapped, approaching them with a coaching development endeavor is going to have far less impact than a place where they say, I love this place and what it's done for me. I feel valued, honored, respected. Let's go, let's roll. I'm willing to participate and access my discretionary effort for us to achieve something based upon what this organization has done for me. So if we look at, sort of the power of coaching and what it does, we now have 13 case studies, of which I'll show you a couple here today, about demonstrating the impact of developing people to develop skills to drive outcomes. It is unquestioned that developing skills with people and individuals and teams works to drive meaningful outcomes. But it's essentially about raising the capacity of individuals and teams to create results. And I remember the very first physician that I coached many, many years ago. It's probably 2000, early 2002. And the first endeavor, the first intervention was to create coaching criteria. That means which of the clinicians in the medical group needed coaching. And our coaching criteria was those in the first percentile and below. That means everybody below the first percentile, or more than 4 complaints per year. That qualified you for coaching, because we had to have some sort of selection criteria. So I went to go coach and meet with this clinician, and that interaction was pretty profound in terms of all of us ending up here on this webinar today. That clinician was not obstinate. He was not resisting. He was not arguing the data. He was absolutely, totally, utterly broken in tears. He would get these reports, these dashboards on a monthly basis saying, I have no idea what to do with this. He was afraid of losing his job. His despair and his work anxiety was spilling over and affecting his marriage. It was impacting the relationship with his kids. He was sleepless and worrying about these red flashing boxes with no help and support to become better. And the realization was, we are holding clinicians, care team members accountable for things that they don't even know how to do. And of course, we watched that clinician rise and not only become a better clinician and turn red boxes green, but discover the amazingness of this clinical walk by impacting the patients that he was taking care of, becoming a better colleague, a better teammate, a better team leader. And in that moment, realized that the process of helping people become better is a worthwhile endeavor to dedicate your life to. So here we are. And part of the coaching process is, how do we go from reactive, meaning identifying a problem, to proactive, to using broad application, wide aperture, everybody in developing skills to execute an outcome? Because reactive coaching and proactive strategic deployment of coaching are two totally different approaches. And again, it's about helping individuals by focusing on who they want to become and helping them to take action to become that. Because coaching is not, go do these things so our goals can be achieved. It's about, who do you want to be in this walk? And if you look at drivers of human contentment, and if there's a wonderful paper that came out about 20 years ago from Duke University about the drivers of human contentment, and they found 3 basic things that drove contentment that crossed cultures and regions and geographies and time. And those 3 things were mastery, a chance to accomplish, advance, progress, contribute to something meaningful. The process of mastery is a fundamental driver of human contentment. The second was authenticity, meaning I am being who I've always aspired to be. to allow people to live in accordance with their deepest held beliefs of who they know that they want to be and should be. And the process of coaching is essentially that process. Who do you want to be in this clinical walk? And we're going to help you get there. And the third was belonging. I'm a part of a place where people care about each other, lift each other, support each other, and look out for one another. Life is way too hard to do alone. And coaching and developing people has the ability to pull all three of those levers. We are continually improving on things that we care deeply about, that are important to me as a clinician, as a care team, as an organization. We never stop. We are allowing care team members and leaders to be who they've always aspired to be. There's no clinician I've ever met that says, 20 years from now, after I finish residency, I want to be cynical, depressed, and impossible to be around. We don't even like ourselves in that context. We want clinicians to be who they hope to be. And third, to do it together. Coaching is best leverage going together, everybody moving in the same direction with the same common shared purpose. And again, others have validated that the power of coaching, training, and developing people, Gallup has demonstrated it is the most powerful driver of engagement. And if you talk to anybody who's finished a leadership academy or has been mentored to do something extraordinary that has advanced their career and how they feel about the place that has done that for them, it's an incredibly powerful signal. People say, how do we engage our people? First of all, we engage our leaders to do the actions that engage people, and we help people grow and become the kind of care team members that they've always aspired to be. So we're gonna run some polls here. So our first poll is, which of the following best characterizes your organization's coaching approach? As we either individually or across a group. We don't have one. We use coaching primarily for low performers. Individuals can request coaching to help them improve. Our coaching is a group-wide effort to achieve a priority. How would you characterize where you are? This is what I hate about polls, is just the awkward pause. Matt, how are we doing?
We're good. I'm gonna end the poll in 3, 2, 1.
Excellent. All right. So between about 57% between coaching reactively for low performers, and again, there's people that need individual help or we don't have one, and about 14% have a group-wide effort driving towards a priority. So this is exactly what we expected. A little bit of bias here since we have some of our members in the audience. So let's think about the sorts of things that we need from our clinicians, right? I mean, there's a lot of PX folks that are there. But if every clinician in your group, every care team member, every nurse was extraordinary with the patients that they served, and every patient that they interacted with said, I would pay more and drive further, and everybody I know, love, and care about has got to come here for their care. If all of us did all of that all the time, are we guaranteed of our organizational success? The point being is that there's more than just that, right? There's a variety of things that make for highly performing healthcare systems. So I'm going to give you a tough question for which there's not a right answer. This is more of the opinion. If you had to identify one thing, you could just pick one thing. This is not like pick them all, but you had to pick one thing as the most important thing that a clinician behavior does that positions your organization to be successful. Is it patient connection? Is it leading small teams? Is it being a good colleague? Is it leveraging their influence to engage others? Or is it their clinical ability? So if you had to pick one as the number one most important thing that clinicians do to advance your organization's success. All right.
We'll end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
One. All right. Patient connection. Wow. Leading small teams, being a good colleague, leveraging their influence to engage others, clinical productivity. So interesting. And we'll have a chance to share some of this data with you in addition to the slides, but I'm curious. And I think it reflects our audience again. So if we look at the, we talked about, how do we create care team members, clinicians that are both contributory and contented, right? I mean, it's both. They're like two strands of DNA. And again, one begets the other. And our literature shows, and other studies have shown, when clinicians become better, particularly at patient connectivity, their sense of fulfillment, contentment, and joy improve. But if you think about the things that we need from our clinicians, we certainly need them to connect with patients. I mean, it is, if you look at the ambulatory environment, the interaction with a clinician behind the exam room door is the singular greatest predictor of patients' decisions in terms of where they're going to be seeking care. So it's profoundly important. But it's also really important to be a good colleague. You will, if you've got a colleague that dismisses, marginalizes, sends bad consults, criticizes a colleague in the notes, whatever it may be, where clinicians feel alone and unsafe, that is a cultural wrecking ball. And people will bail in a heartbeat. So the idea of how do we create a place where clinicians are great colleagues for each other profoundly corresponds to the ability to retain and engage your talent. That is a skill. How do I become a great colleague to my teammates? You can't rely on, well, I hope they're good colleagues to their teammates, because we didn't learn that in residency. Team leadership. Our behaviors are immensely contagious. And we have found in some of our partner data that the performance of the entire team, particularly in regards to patient experience, oscillates directly with how the clinician is doing. Is it cause and effect? Is it, co-located? Whatever it may be. But as the clinician goes, so goes the small team that looks to them for leadership. And giving them the skills by which to engage others to move in a direction is an incredibly underdeveloped skill set, and immensely important. People say, how do we move an organization? It's getting frontline clinicians to become local ambassadors to what you want to achieve. Because culture change occurs at the motor end plate of healthcare, right? It doesn't occur at the C-suite. It's got to cascade all the way down to where care is happening. And we have to develop the skills to leverage their influence to engage others, and certainly diagnosis and management of disease. If somebody's amazing with patients and a great colleague, but a clinical hack, I mean, they're a charlatan. We have to bring all those things. And like 2% said their clinical ability is their most important thing. So, or the clinical productivity. Anyway, a steward of resources here in San Diego. If you've got a clinician who's 3x more complex imaging than anybody else, and that's just how they do things, making your group expensive in San Diego, you're tiered out of network. You're done as a group. So our ability to develop clinicians to think with a stewardship mindset, and what do I do to help deliver the value equation, to be clinically efficient, to be a team collaborator, to reduce authority gradients, to engage others, to honor and support our teammates, to build the culture, and to care for themselves, to advance a culture of safety. I mean, how do we advance a culture of safety and reduce patient harm if we don't develop the specific skills that represent a safety culture of our people? The point being is that which of these do we drop? So our ability to build a coaching culture that includes everyone, to learn the skills that position your organization to achieve its objectives, is essential. It is the catalyst, the enzyme for getting to your future state. Okay. And that's, part of the process of taking coaching from that first physician that I coached and eventually shadowed in the first percentile, and realizing that clinicians are held accountable for things that they don't know how to do, to broadening this to say, why wouldn't everybody get to participate in learning things that allow them to contribute and find joy and contentment, and to do it together, to access mastery of continuous improvement, to access authenticity. I am being who I've always aspired to be, and to belong. We are going together, serving a mission bigger than any one of us. So thinking about the power of coaching. So I'm going to give you 3 lessons that I've learned in the coaching process. And, a lot of this is just observation from beginning with me. The first person I coached was me, and going through a pretty profound life perspective change. And I've told the story many times where medicine for me was a pretty dark space for a while. And the ability to connect, the ability to be a team leader, the ability to become proud of who I was, and to be the kind of clinician that I thought I was going to be when I chose medicine, came about by virtue of doing things that allowed me to connect, that allowed me to collaborate, that allowed me to lead. And it was that feedback of what it did for my life that gave me the fuel and the passion to bring it to others. And that process of when we become better was lighting up colleagues along the way as well. So my first lesson is, the things that we these critical skills, whether it be team collaboration, leveraging our influence to engage others, reducing authority gradients, being a good colleague, how to manage patients demanding antibiotics for viral illness, or there's 100 things. They're not developed, they're underdeveloped, or they're badly developed. And anything that gets on a dashboard in terms of accountability, in terms of a performance feedback to clinician, has to be coupled to, I have tools to make that better. You cannot give data without tools for improvement as a guiding principle. Second learning is helping grow and develop people impacts, again, their contribution and their contentment and in their work. And it's true for anything. And if you're a chef and making this extraordinary meal that people say, gosh, I just want to stop chewing because it's so good. That scene in Ratatouille where that food critic had that moment with that food that the rat had prepared and what it's like to do that and to be a part of that and be immensely proud of, I'm being the person I've always aspired to be. That's what coaching and the bringing of behaviors that allow us to connect, to allow us to collaborate, to allow us to become great colleagues can do. Becoming extraordinary at our work is our access point to contentment, on the condition that the soil that the clinicians are rising from, I'm heard, I'm listened to, I'm valued, I'm deburdened, and I am in a place where I'm out of survival mode and I'm ready to go because the direction we're going is worthy. So in learning 3, the signals that we send as an organization to help and support people gives them the sense of, I have a chance to be my best here. Huge driver of engagement. I am valued here and I see a future here. And if we look at, how do we use coaching to stabilize workforce, and how do we use coaching to execute outcomes and things like patient experience? We have to be able to do things through the development of leaders, teams, and individuals that prompt them to say, I do have a chance to be my best here. I feel absolutely, utterly valued here, and I definitely see a future here. So let's dive in to 4 key steps in coaching clinicians. And how do we do it individually? And how do we, again, widen the aperture to create an organizational intervention for people to go together to execute an outcome? And our steps will begin with develop and communicate a future state that reflects what we aspire to be. And we spoke about this a little bit in our last session about how do we build a future state that prompts people to say, now that is what I want to participate in, and frame it in a way that draws people in. This irresistible future state is a critical session. We're going to next talk about leaders going first and developing leaders in the coaching process. Next is how do we map our coaching to achieve our future state, and how do we specifically build skills individually and system-wide. So let's do a case study. And this is actually the abbreviations of our three of our numbers. So, because this story has played out, it plays out as the process of using technology-enabled skill building to capacitate enterprise-wide development of people to execute an outcome. And so in this case, BPR healthcare system sees significant retail and care system competition emerging in their region. Patient churn is a big threat to them. Patients wandering out a network is a big threat and revenue loss for them. They have to build a place at a culture that generates patient loyalty as measured by patient experience. There's both a need to stabilize the workforce challenges that virtually everybody has right now and optimize patient loyalty as opportunities for both patients and care team members, as opportunities for care team members and patients are becoming more accessible. Okay, they can choose. And BPR has made a commitment to advance experience of care teams and patients as their big rock priorities. Okay, so they've identified two big rock priorities: the experience of patients and the engagement of teams. And how might we use coaching enterprise-wide to execute those outcomes? Okay, so how do we get there? Step number one is defining your future state. And what do we want to become? And again, the process of defining what we aspire to be has to resonate from your teams and with your teams. So the process of harvesting and meeting with your leaders, with your frontline teams, within meetings to say, if we were everything we aspired to be for our patients, then what does that look like? If this is everything you hope for in terms of your experience here, what does that look like? And gathering intel to distill themes to be able to convey and signal a future state that is by them and not at them. They're having an opportunity to voice, this is what we aspire for our group where we work and what we want to become. And for BPR, they said to become a place where care team members are supported, developed, and empowered to become their best. And then to become a place where patients remain based upon consistent compassion, expertise, and kindness wherever they go. And so what your future state says is up to you based upon what you achieve. And essentially, the future state, when it goes from a future state to beginning to manifest, just like it did at Sharp Healthcare, there's a clear sense of what it means to be you. There's a clear identity that is embraced, supported with even passion and enthusiasm and pride, meaning this is what it means to be us. This is what it means to be a member of this team. That's what we're able to cultivate during those times of the application of the Baldrige Award that allowed us to unify a complex organization to do something and become something that begins with what will we be and what does it mean to be us? Okay. So our next poll is to ask the question, how would your clinicians respond to the question, what does it mean to be us? So if I were that Baldrige examiner, as an example, or if I were just asking random clinicians out of earshot of leadership, then what would their testimony be? Do you say, I have no idea what they would say? Do you say it sort of depends on who you run into, because some people embrace it, some people know, other people are no idea. You will hear different themes, meaning some people will say we're this, other people will say we're that. There's different themes in terms of the fundamental identity of our group, or you will hear a clear and united theme in terms of what it means to be us here where you are. So provide your best answer in terms of what you think your clinicians would say when we ask the question, what does it mean to be us here where you are? So Matt, kick that off.
Yep. The poll's open. We're going to close it in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here are the results.
There we go. Right. So 15%. There we go. That is an essential part of the change journey. I would say it's 50% of your process of becoming better is articulating, communicating, and establishing and harvesting ideas for what you want to become. It's the house by which coaching and development lives in. It's how data reporting makes sense. It is a quantitative verification of our progress towards that thing that has come again and again and again and again. So as we build the future state, the role of leadership at every layer, from your board to your executive team, to your directors, to your managers, to influencers, to everybody, what we aspire to become, what it means to be us, what is our future state, repeatedly, passionately, enthusiastically, authentically. Just that as an intervention. And again, it's got to be repeatedly, passionately, enthusiastically, authentically, because if you get up in front of the head of orthopedics and say, you've heard that the patient experience has become really important. So as opposed to leaders standing up and saying, this is the most important thing we've ever done as an organization. This represents what it means to be us in terms of the experience of the patients that we care for and how we take care of each other. And I would encourage you to think about as you convey your future state, it's who will we be for our patients and who will we be for each other? Because both are essential, particularly in the context of the workforce challenges. Every leader amplifies the message. That is the role of the leader. If you have a leader that is failing to engage, communicate enthusiastically, passionately, authentically, it's like a mutated enzyme, right? You have a buildup of substrate and you failure to deliver a product because you can't communicate, engage other people by failure to have discipline in regards to the communication of the future state. So as we look at crafting the future state, we always begin the journey with leaders going first, developing leaders to not only coach their teams, but to deploy the actions to engage others. Our teams are looking at leaders and what they're doing, what they're saying, and what they're accountable for. Transformational enterprise change is about leaders learning to bring the best of their teams. And my banner, my motto in terms of what it means to be a leader is helping those that you lead become their best. That's simply what we do. And our ability to learn the skills and the behaviors to engage them in a visible, authentic, vulnerable, witnessable way that says, first me, then thee. I am willing to learn the skills to help and support you. And leaders telling the stories of what they're committed to, what they're experiencing, and tell the stories of the application of their skills in what we refer to as the P12. Each of these are essential skills in terms of self-awareness. How do we create leaders that are listening and responding, leaders that are harvesting the ideas from their teams, leaders that are growth mindset of let's go, let's roll, let's do this, and don't assume a victim stance, leaders that are incredible storytellers, that they're able to harvest the amazing things that teams are doing. As a leadership skill, they have this immense sense of appreciation and honoring the people doing the work. They actually learn coaching skills on how to bring their wisdom in a real, tangible, practical way to help and support and lift their teams. They model the behaviors. They become the thing that they want others to do. They are out front and helping their teammates and becoming available for them. They have great compassion for the teams that they lead, and they speak honestly with great candor and skill and respect. And so as we look on how do we create organizational change, it must be leaders with the capability of getting this work done. So our ability to harvest the P12 and deliver the B12 is enormously important. So as we begin to develop leaders as the first step in the process, the next step is how do we map enterprise coaching to execute an organizational outcome? So in the case of BPR, it's leaders participating in leadership development to engage teams, right? I mean, that's our intervention. We want to engage our teams as manifested by reducing turnover and increase engagement, reduction of burnout. 70% of that equation is by how leaders are leading. So we develop leaders to deploy the skills, P12, on advancing that effort And we also want to build the loyalty of patients. So care teams participate in coaching to advance the care, the patient experience. So here's how it may look. So, the first part of the process is, what do you want to achieve? What matters most to you? What are your priorities? Okay. So your future state goal, and again, that's up to you. And it's going to be different for every organization. We took two that are prominent themes that we've heard, which is patient experience and team engagement. And based upon, again, who do we aspire to be for our patients and who do we aspire to be for each other and the people that we lead? In this together, meaning everyone, continual evidence-derived, actionable, recognizable skills that we can deploy that are based upon evidence that allow people to get better on the very skills that are known to advance the experience of patients and will advance the sense of fulfillment and mastery and contentment and joy in the work. The best moments that we have as clinicians is our ability to impact the people behind that exam room door, as measured by not only qualitatively, we become a storytelling organization to constantly harvest the impact of the deployment of skills that we're learning, as tracked by things like CG CAPS. And so too, the team engagement. Who do we aspire to be for each other? All leaders, teams on simple actions proven to advance engagement. And I'll show you a little bit more detail what that looks like. And then every program that we deploy and map to a specific organizational outcome must have a success tracker, a progress tracker to verify quantifiable, measurable improvement. So, and again, you can identify what those success measures are based upon the programs that you select that are mapped to the priorities that you identify. So, it would be amazing to say, gosh, in 1 year, we went from the 45th percentile to the 68th percentile in patient experience, and we took turnover from 8.9% to 5.5% in a year's time. And to be able to have quantifiable, verifiable mechanisms that the broad, wide aperture of developing skills to execute outcomes is yielding significant improvement. And so this is what it may look like, and giving you a little bit more detail. Many of our organizations have concurrent tracks, or what we call programs, where leaders are learning to lead. And sometimes teams are learning to collaborate with one another. What do we do to help and support each other? What does it mean to be a good teammate? What does it mean to lift and identify my colleague? What does it mean to appreciate and to know the person beside me? Those are culture changers. But in the absence of we specifically develop skills to allow those behaviors to manifest, it doesn't manifest. So the process of mapping coaching to allow team collaboration, leadership effectiveness, and patient connectivity is a really powerful intervention to apply coaching with a wide aperture, enterprise-wide, to execute an outcome. And just simply mapping a coaching strategy to a goal that you want to achieve with pre and post measures of success and the skills known to manifest that future state, whatever that future state may be: patient experience, team engagement, wellness, team collaboration, safety culture, whatever that may be. And the last step 4, is actually building the skills, which is, how do we build skills and what's the rationale for it? This is when the rubber hits the road. Building the skills that creates the outcomes so the future state can manifest. So if our future state is every patient that we see has extraordinary loyalty and brand ambassadorship out of the community, what things do we do as we interact with them as a care team to allow that sentiment to express? We know what those things are. It's just a matter of doing them. And what do we do as a leadership team and as a colleague so teammates say, I want to stay here. I would advocate for this place. I will access my discretionary effort. I will use my voice to help engage others. This is everything I hoped it to be. I love this place, and I will do what I can to help it succeed. What do we do specifically in terms of skills to allow that to manifest? Okay. We use microlearning on the fly approach because we know that nobody has any time to learn anything. And we've learned this over the course of time. And we've also learned that learning is like exercise. It never ends. You don't do an 8-hour workshop and then do another one 4 months later. Who the heck remembers what they did 2 days ago, let alone 4 months ago? It is a continual process, always learning, always reminding, always applying, and doing it as a basal rate of always learning the skills of patient connectivity, team collaboration, leadership, self-care, whatever it is that you happen to be working on, and leveraging synchronicity and coordinated skill building to accelerate results. When everybody's learning the same thing at the same time, super powerful to accelerate our ability to achieve results. And approaches have got to be proven simple and actionable. Clinicians in particular, it's like, tell me what actually works, and let me try that thing. So again, for those that are coaching clinicians individually, and again, God bless you, go for it. It's an important adjunctive intervention. It's just not, it doesn't have the horsepower to create organizational transformation. But it's, as I said, it can be life transforming for the individual, and it's a well worth doing. And again, the things that I have found to be really powerful, again, what I ask every clinician that I coach is, tell me who you want to be in this life. And I have a chance to have them tell their story, and I'm simply there to help them become that. What do you love most about this work? And you're going to find exactly the things that we're going to be coaching are the things that they love most, having done this 800 times. We want to help advance insight is critical to improve. Clinicians who have self-awareness and insight in terms of what they're doing with patients or what they're doing with colleagues is actually contributing to the outcomes that we're seeing. That's what we call coachability. And I'm going to give you some tactics to raise that, because if they say, it's not me, it's them, they're uncoachable at that point. And we have to raise insight before we intervene with coaching. Flip classroom is you give them a challenge and you allow them to debrief. They will experience things that will turn them from cynics to ambassadors when they learn the power of calling out a teammate and pulling them aside and recognizing and appreciating them, and continual encouragement and celebrating the amazing things that will happen. Raising coachability is, again, improvement in response to coaching. These are some techniques that we can use. One of my favorite ones is, if we've got a real cynic, we just say, ask patients how they define the greatest clinician that they've ever known. Because I've asked a lot of patients that, they all say the same thing, and it's exactly the things we're coaching. So for them to discover from the mouth of patients what it means to be a great clinician is very convincing that this is a worthwhile endeavor. And sometimes I'll ask, is listening to patients important? Well, yeah, of course. Are we as good as we can be on this? No. Well, then we've set up an opportunity and a window to coach and train to raise coachability. So next polling question, we're going to pick at the pace here a little bit. What would the consistency of managing patients requesting unnecessary care be among your clinicians? So this is a skill, right? This is a specific skill on what clinicians do with patients in the exam room, right? So what do you think the consistency of that constellation of skills is? Managing patients requesting unnecessary care as a skill set. What's your answer to what you think your clinicians are doing? Go ahead and open up that poll.
Poll is open. About half of folks responded. Give it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So 1% have and this is a watershed skill. If we don't know how to do this, the patient can walk out and say, I'm paying $1,200 a month for this. You got to be kidding me. I was dismissed. I was marginalized. And I know what? I talked to my neighbor. I've done research, and this is what I get. There's huge implications on this. And we could stack up empathy, listening, explaining care, managing, managing antibiotic requests, all of them. There's tremendous variation in regards to what happens behind the exam room door. So as we look at organizational-wide coaching techniques, the ideal learning process is we have an opportunity to learn on our own. Within the app, clinicians can learn at 5 minutes a week, and they can learn as much as they want on as many things as they want, but they can learn and take a journey on their own. And there's tremendous power in learning together and going together. The context of a program is everybody gets the same tip at the same time across time. There's a shared source code. We distill from the evidence and expert opinion, and we distill it what you need to know in a singular spot. The destination is who do we want to become? There's incredible power in harvesting the stories of skill application, recognition for progress and completion of learning, and even certifications, the ability to certify people in patient connectivity and leadership and team collaboration, and create an opportunity for colleague skill exchange in the process of forums. We've had amazing activity in forums where they're working on things like how do we manage patients requesting medically unnecessary care, and watch coaching tips and have forums and skill exchange in that context is incredibly community building, as well as a collaborative learning experience to advance skills together. And again, the flipped classroom, which is sending out a challenge in advance and debriefing during a meeting on what you saw. This is a little snapshot in regards to how it is that we architect the wide aperture coaching intervention across all disciplines that are discipline specific for coaching tips that are specific to their role. And we have probably one of our most popular leadership programs right now is how do we lead the patient experience? How do we do this? What do we say? How do we build a cause? How do we make it purpose-driven? How do we engage others? How are we storytellers? How do we harvest data? How do we report data? How do we encourage? How do we engage people in the process of this journey, becoming better, and having leaders learn how to do that, manager and above, following each and every member of the team has a chance to learn their skills. This is the program that almost every one of our organizations has participated in, and building rapport, creating patients' confidence. Creating patients' confidence is probably the singular greatest correlation to patient loyalty, which is I am confident in my care team in providing the right care. The paradox is they have no idea what we're doing clinically. Therefore, they will grab proxies, which are the behaviors like referencing work up to date, which is explaining care, positioning colleagues well, and what to do when they go home. So those are very specific skills. Listening is profoundly important. How we convey compassion, how we finish strong, and to be able to have the team go through these synchronously together is incredibly powerful to, again, widen the aperture of coaching as an organization, enterprise-wide coaching intervention. Here are some of our groups. Providence Medical Group had nearly a 5-point increase, which is a radical improvement in overall provider performance in the care provider section. SEL Health, similar results. And again, as I said, 13 case studies and personal conviction that helping people become their best on things that matter to them, to become the kind of clinician that they've always aspired to be, and for them to get the feedback loops from leaders telling their story and patients saying, you have no idea the difference you made in my life, is a powerful sustainment mechanism. So in summary, coaching is helping people become their best and raising their capacity to bring results to manifest a future state that is deeply enriching for the teams, for the patients, for the organizations, that is irresistible for the healing population and what we want to be a part of and what kind of purpose we want to serve. Leader participation, modeling enthusiasm for the road ahead is essential. Leaders not only drive receptiveness of the care team to participate in this endeavor, but our capability of modeling, coaching, encouraging, storytelling, and all the band of effective leadership is a critical channel and capacitating the organization to get transformative results through this coaching intervention. Group-wide coaching taps the power of shared approach, going together, and coordinated efforts, because we've got 100 things going on. If we put big rocks in the hill and what we want to achieve, having people learn those skills together and move in the same direction is incredibly powerful, with the opportunity to have support. Our support team is breathtakingly good. Mary Sue Ismail and her client success team have done amazing things with a net promoter score of almost 80 in regards to helping supporting the implementation process. And again, mapping group coaching to organizational goals is key to delivering outcomes. It's not ad hoc, it's not reactive. It is a proactive endeavor to build skills, to drive outcomes with pre and post measures of success. So our motto, live this life full throttle. each and every one of you has an opportunity to encourage, to lift, to model, to be an innovator, and to lift the people within your sphere of influence. There's a lot wrong with healthcare now, but we see it with great hope and optimism that we have full dominion over the things that matter most: who we are for the patients that we serve, who we are for the colleagues that we stand beside, and who we are as leaders to lift and support the people that we take care of. And as Steve Jobs said, ideas without action aren't ideas. They are regrets. So we're all about living this life without regrets. So anyway, I'm going to pass back to Matt, and incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Many of you are our current partners, and to talk a little bit about our next gathering, which won't be me. It'll be on the nursing front. So Matt, passing back to you, my friend.
Thanks, Steve. So we are going to be distributing the slides from this presentation and the recording to you all by way of email tomorrow. So you all receive that in your inbox. We will also include an invitation to our next roundtable in August, which is focused on why Banner has prioritized coaching for their nursing workforce. And then next week, we will be sending out a summary of all that we talked about here, all the poll data, all the steps and key learnings will be packaged into a document for you, and hopefully for you to share with colleagues as well. The time has come. We have only a few minutes left for question and answer. A couple of other things on this slide, though, while we do that, and please enter your questions in the Q&A function here. We got a couple of really good ones. Opportunity to connect with Steve, use that QR code or email address. Opportunity to register for our next roundtable on August 16th, just that QR code. And with that, we'll get into questions quickly here. This one I love. It's around developing leaders. Are you, Steve, talking about developing leaders, just those leaders with high EQ?
No, it's a great question. And EQ, for those of you that don't know, is emotional intelligence, and it's a combination of I know who I am. I live my life in according to my belief systems. I'm highly aware and responsive to how I impact other people. I'm a continual learner. I honor and celebrate feedback to become better, to serve a mission. And I am, in general, deeply committed to serving a purpose that I believe in. That's the high EQ leader. And literature shows that EQ is genetic. I mean, there's a strong genetic influence, but there's also high EQ skills that we can absolutely 100% develop. So some of our coaching content is about emotional intelligence and building self-awareness and identifying who do we want to be as a leader. But we think that every leader, manager and above, needs to develop skills to engage their people. And there's lots of variance around EQ and that broad spectrum of leaders.
Awesome. Next question. How do you address having an aspirational message that may come from just a handful of leaders versus the collective team?
Yes, there's nothing more powerful than a colleague standing up that is in the trenches with you to say, let's do this. And that's a strategic part of a deployment, to create the sense of a cause and a movement. And in fact, part of our deployment mechanism is to harvest frontline influencers, meaning those that have the ears of their colleagues, and for them to begin to tell their story about what they aspire to be and what we should aspire to be. Of course, we want to grab people that are ambitious and passionate about becoming better for patients and better for each other and enriching the lives of those providing care, and who doesn't want that. And so not only leaders, executive, directors, managers, but there's a constellation of influencers that are saying the same story. And it's a strategic effort that is a critical part of advancing the readiness for change.
And we'll get you out of here on this. I know we're at the top of the hour, but there's a question here. My teams are really burned out. How do we begin a coaching process in that situation?
Right. So, and leaders are burned out as well. And leading with simple leader behaviors that we know help to lift people is a critical paramount importance, that we honor, that we create psychological safety, that we provide resources for people to access help and support, and all of those things about how do we lead to engage is an important endeavor. And a lot of the, kind of the well-being approach. One of the coaching tips, for example, is in the well-being approach that we've learned that can be applied in or outside practicing excellence, is running exercises called My Darkest Teacher, meaning what is the hardest thing I've ever been through as a clinician, and how's that shaped who I am today? And that creates incredible vulnerability that I'm not alone in the despair that I'm feeling. And running another session about, what has been the best moment you ever had as a clinician, and have people begin to tell the stories about the extraordinary moments they've had as a clinician in the context of a safe forum, to begin to strike up the conversation. We're in this for the long run. How do we build this organization so it supports you, helps you, listens to you, and gives you some durability? And part of that is deburdening, but also it's the safety of what are we going to be as an organization, and how will we lead this organization, and how will we support each other, and how will we ultimately impact our patients? So the well-being program, the leadership program, we've had lots of compelling response in regards to helping and supporting in the context of a lot of despair that's still out there.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions.
All right.
And enjoy the rest of your week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.